Good afternoon, everyone. It's Pablo.Zuanic, equity analyst at Zuanic and Associates, following the cannabis sector. I have the pleasure of welcoming the chairman, president, and CEO of Tilray Brands, the largest cannabis company in the world by market cap, Tilray Brands, Irwin Simon. Irwin, how are you?
I'm good, Pablo. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you for joining us today. Look, we have a lot to cover. I'll be respectful of your time. So let's just start with a big picture question. You've been CEO now of Tilray for about 7 years. What are you most proud of so far about your tenure as Tilray chairman since you joined?
Boy, is it 7 years already? How time goes when you're having
That's right.
fun, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Actually, I don't think it's 7 years, Pablo. It's 2019. Anyway,
Six. Okay. Almost
6 years.
Yeah.
6 years. Anyway, what I'm proud of, when I joined and took this company over, we were a FRIA and we were doing about $50 million in revenue, approximately Canadian dollars, and we had very little cash. We had about $20 million of cash. Canada was the only country where cannabis was legal federally. We really didn't have a business outside of Canada, and we were just a cannabis company. We were not diversified. When I took over, basically, we had $20 million of cash left, and we're burning $20 million of cash. So, there was a lot of knocks on the door that a FRIA at that time would not be around. So I was faced with, cash crunch. I was faced with multiples of lawsuits, which there was a short report. There was an activist. There was, at that time, potentially a hostile takeover. And there was a challenge also ultimately with the founders and some of the stuff that they did. So what am I proud of today? As you said, we're the largest grower of cannabis in the world today. We have over 5 million square feet of grow in Canada. We have grow in Portugal and Germany. We grow over 200 million metric tons. We do over $800+ million a year. We sell in 20 different countries today. At the end of the last quarter, we had over $255 million of cash. Our debt level from the EBITDA was, 0.1. We diversified in the U.S., being the fourth largest craft brewer, being in the spirits business, and having a good wellness business. So a lot has happened in my 6 years. What I'm not happy with, and you didn't ask me that question, but I'll answer that question, the performance from our stock. And I think a lot of that has to do with the whole cannabis world today. And even if you perform, do you get the credit? Ultimately, when President Trump or someone comes out and talks about, rescheduling or what's happening there, you see a movement on the stock.
Yeah.
So, very excited about the plans and the opportunities and what we're doing. But probably, from my disappointment is our stock performance.
Yeah. But look, just staying on these big picture questions, and for the audience, obviously, I misspoke, but when I said, largest cannabis company by market cap, I'm talking about NASDAQ listed, right? There's a couple of MSOs that may be larger, but they trade over the counter.
Right.
But, just in terms of, are you a CPG company or are you a cannabis company? Just a short answer.
No, if you come back and look at our revenue today, a third of our revenue comes from cannabis, a third of our revenue comes from beverage and drinks, and the other third of our revenue comes from our distribution business in Europe. And, our company is called Tilray Brands. So I want to look at us today as a consumer packaged goods business that participates in, medical and recreational cannabis, in beverages, and in wellness foods. And that's how I look at Tilray today.
All right. Thank you. Look, we're going to cover the various businesses in your portfolio, but let's go straight to hemp-derived Delta-9 drinks. Let's start with the current ban, right? It will be effective in 1 year. How do we get here, right? The CR, the ban that would take effect in 1 year. and your prognostication in terms of what happened in 12 months? Does it stick, or will there be some changes to it?
Listen, it's kind of ironic how we got here, that a ban came with a bill introduced, in regards to opening up the government of spending and trying to get air traffic controllers and trying to get, federal employees back to work.
Yep.
It's unfortunate that a senator who was lobbied by probably, some of the industries put this in the bill. And, our senators, diligently, and our president worked hard to get the country back open and wanted to get that bill passed. And nobody wanted to vote against it. So in essence, it was disappointing that that something like this would become part of such an important bill that got passed. Okay, we've had pushbacks before. We've had, disappointments. And now what we have to do with our lobbyists, with our senators, and with our congressmen and women, we have to change this bill. The hemp industry had to be regulated in regards to drinks. I think the good that will come out of this, and again, this is me being optimistic and me being, very pessimistic, that we really have good, sensible senators and good, sensible congressmen and women that will put a bill forward that will ultimately regulate the amount of hemp THC that will be allowed in drinks, whether it's 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams, and we'll be able to sell it on a national basis and being sold in every state. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what we're going to push hard and work towards. That's what I'm reaching out to senators and congressmen and women and working with our lobbyists to try and get done.
Right. But look, just before we move on, my only concern is whether the hemp industry is going to lobby as one, or are we going to have carve-outs, right? Hemp-derived CBD, one, non-intoxicating, right? Let's call it the Charlotte Figi legacy, right? Then you have the hemp Delta 9 drinks, right? 5 mg, 10 mg per can. And then you have the more intoxicating, hemp-derived gummies and vapes, right? Which are three very different groups. Could that happen, or they lobby as one? What's your prognostication in that regard?
Listen, I think they're going to lobby as one, because you're not going to get three different bills passed, okay? And it makes sense that we all lobby together. Okay. And I see that's what's happening now. And I just want to make one thing clear, Pablo. This does not affect Manitoba Harvest, sure, which is a nice growing business for us, which, again, was part of the Farm Bill in 2018. So this has no effect. Right. And again, there's not an effect on our, business today. This here was just a startup for our business this year. It grew dramatically, big opportunity. We were investing in this business heavily. So there was no contribution towards EBITDA or profitability here. Yes. So if this goes away, which will be disappointing, it's not going to be, negative towards our earnings or profitability. Actually, it's accretive, because, we were investing in this business heavily. But again, retailers want to see this business in this category stay. Distributors want to see this business stay. Consumers want to see this business stay. And hopefully we'll be able to do it. Listen, the next 6 months, and I will tell you this here, since the bill has passed, the demand for the product has increased dramatically. Really? And to show support for it. Now, I will tell you, if nothing happens within 6 months, you'll see some changes in that in regards to winding down. Sure. But hopefully that's not the case.
Right. Okay, now just moving on to the beer and liquor business, and maybe let's concentrate on beer, because I think that's the bulk of the revenue in this division, although sure you have the distillery business. But in terms of beer, explain the accomplishments mostly in this division. You've had to integrate a number of craft brands, most of them regional, and what is still left to do? I believe there was a leadership change in the middle of this year. So let's start with that.
So again, listen, we bought Sweetwater in 2020, at the end of 2020, yeah, and got into the beer business. Then we acquired 3 brands on the West Coast, then we acquired Montauk, and then we acquired 8 brands from ABI, and then 4 brands from Molson's. So, there's a lot of integration going on there, and there's a lot of cost to take out of that business. Listen, at the same time, it's no secret the category is down 5%. But I'll tell you what, beer is not going away. And I think if anything, our strategy is on to sell our brands in certain regions and look at Shock Top to become our national brand. And that's what we're focused on, to be that low cost producer, to be that innovator of new products. And, listen, you're going to see us into seltzers. You're going to see us into different types of drinks. We're looking at different type of packaging. Now, where do I see the opportunity, Pablo, is take share away from some of the smaller craft brewers. And that's one of the reasons, I wanted to get into craft beer. I wanted to make beer fun again, exciting again. And I didn't think there was a leader in there. I think you're going to see a lot of the other craft brewers fold up their tent and go away. There's going to be business there. We're being approached internationally from a lot of these international that were shipping products to the U.S. With tariffs that want to have us manufacture their beer and distribute their beer. So I see lots of opportunities. And I'll tell you what, I'm interested in other acquisitions in the category because the category is not going away. Beer has been around for a long time. Right. And I see lots of opportunities in there to take share, to innovate, and to grow the business. And to be that low-cost producer is consolidated manufacturing in our facilities and bringing other brands within there.
Right, but like you said, you're doubling down on a category that's declining, right? But you still see opportunities and you're trying to narrow it. But in terms of scaling up and doing more acquisitions, I mean, you still have a long way to go to, let's say, get to Boston Beer levels. I mean, how far do you go in terms of M&A in beer?
So if you look at Boston Beer, they're not really
yes.
a beer company anymore there. I mean, they're seltzer drinks, certicity, their cruisers and that are a big part of that, okay? So, and you look, I guess it's rumor out there that ABI, what they recently bought, et cetera.
Right.
So with that, I see a good size, I still see a big, category out there within the beer market. Listen, I just got back. I have a son at USC, and I was there for Parents Weekend, and I was there for football games. I see a lot of beer still being consumed, by consumers and that out there. So yes, the category is, not growing, but I think there's opportunities to get growth with share. Also, Pablo, with our energy drinks, with our Liquid Love, with our waters, with our light beer, there's some other stuff that we're doing within the category that we think, that will help us grow. The other thing we're looking at this category is what we do internationally. Our guys are in Dubai right now talking with distributors and manufacturers doing halal beer and doing, non-alc beer. So there's a lot we want to do within the beverage category. Why? Because we have manufacturing, we have infrastructure of salespeople on the street, we have a distributor platform of almost 900 distributors out there. So we think there's lots of opportunities in the beverage category and the beer category.
Just a couple of last questions in terms of beer. I mean, can you share any KPIs? I know it's still integration phase, right? Still a lot of work to do. But any wins so far, whether in terms of market share performance, volume growth, price mix gains, anything you can point to in terms of saying, look, things are going well so far?
Listen, I'm seeing some good wins in regards to Shock Top. And one of the things that happened to us in regards to when we bought these businesses, there was a lot of change going on in regards to placements within supermarkets. So we're back now getting those placements in key supermarkets that we didn't have before. We're just in the midst of that now. So yeah, on my next conference call, I will have all our wins, but I'm seeing some good wins out there. Listen, Montauk is the #1 beer here in New York and, within the craft category. I'm seeing some, good wins in the South on Shock Top. Again, I'm excited. I just recently got off a call with Southern Glazer buying out the ABI distribution here in New York and some of the stuff that we look to get Blue Point back growing in New York again. So there's a lot of things in place On the Pacific West, we're seeing some tremendous growth with Red Hook. So yes, lots of interesting things going on here, and lots of wins for us.
Right. Look, I mean, last question, and I'm sorry to bring this up, and don't answer if you don't want to, but there was a leadership change in the summer. What was it that you were not happy with in terms of performance?
Listen, again, were we doing one of the big things with the business today, it's no different than a sports team. It's no different than anything. I'm a big believer. I think there's a great business there. And what's important is having the right team. And, one of the things I was not seeing, and it was not an individual, and an individual is not going to achieve, it's a team. And was the team coming together, within the beer business? And that was why I wanted to change, was bringing the total team together. And, and is the team going to play for the coach? And that's questions you got to, ask yourself. So, and again, if you're not seeing it, then,
Sure.
you got to, make some changes.
Got it. Very last question on beer. Can you explain in your long-term vision, how does the alcohol business converge or coexist with cannabis in a synergistic way, long-term?
Listen, I've said this before, and I had this discussion in a meeting this morning. If I was sitting here today and I could sell, and when I was in Canada last week, as I tried to get our cannabis drinks sold in restaurants, I tried to get our cannabis drinks, sold in the LCBO up there. It's $100+ million business for us. Ultimately, no different. And I think, how big the hemp THC category could be if we could regulate it and sell it in every store within the US. If tomorrow we could take THC drinks and sell them in supermarkets and sell them convenience stores or sell them in beer stores, it's a big category for us. And that's where I hope one day that ultimately what I can do in regards to the beverage business. And I think what's important, Pablo, is this here, and I've said this to you before. Mm-hmm. There's a lot in regards to regulation is held me back within Tilray. I pay over $150 million Canadian in excise tax in Canada. I'm limited to where I can sell my drinks there. I'm limited to where I can sell medical cannabis online and not within drugstores. In the US, I'm limited in regards to medical cannabis, selling it, as, from where it can be in the US. Mm-hmm. I'm limited in regards to selling drinks here. So if I was a Schedule III here in the US in medical cannabis and could sell it at a $10 billion business at a 3 share, it's a $300 million business. If I could sell more drinks, it's a big opportunity. So what Tilray has to do, we have to diversify if the regulatory does not go in our way. Just think if today we were just a hemp drink company, what kind of trouble we'd be in. Just think if we, like MSOs, if cannabis doesn't go to a Schedule III in the US, where you're at. Yeah. So that's why you got to diversify as a company, manage your balance sheet, manage your debt, and not just listen, a car rides on 4 wheels. Companies got to have 4 wheels to ride on today because, you never know when you're going to get that flat tire or blow a tire.
No, I hear it. Okay, so just moving on now to the cannabis supply chain. Just by the way, to the audience, Tilray just put out, I think this week, a very comprehensive corporate deck on their website. It has a lot of details. I think that people, should go through it. Just a reminder for the audience, Irwin, in terms of your supply chain. You are expanding capacity. Tell us, are you expanding in Canada, in Portugal, Germany, where? And just a reminder of your size in terms of your capacity in those markets. Again, in terms of what you can share.
So I just came back I was in Canada all last week or most of last week. I spent a lot of time with the team. First, I'm excited. And I think the big thing is, Pablo, is the new innovation that's coming out from us. in regards to pre-rolls, in regards to infused pre-rolls, in regards to vape, some of the hot products like Zyn type products, where Zyn has been, big within the Philip Morris type of products, which we're doing there. Some of the new oils and some of the new drops, just a lot of new products that we're doing within the Canadian market that we expect to launch, within the third quarter. The other thing is, the big thing that we're really focused on are yields and how we try and get better yields. It was a hot summer. We got hurt by the heat in, a couple of our facilities, and we're looking at new equipment. Part of the things I'm also working with the government up there is utility prices being high. But here's the big thing. We grew cannabis outside in our facility in Cayuga, which we had a really good grow. And you remember I talked about our Maison facility in Quebec, which we, bought when we acquired Hexo. Yeah. We took that facility and we split the facility in growing cannabis and cucumbers. Come the next 3-4 months, we're winding down our cucumber operation, and we're going to convert that back to growing 100% cannabis.
Right.
So with that, we will be growing 237 metric tons of cannabis, for Tilray's use. And a lot of that, as we convert this cannabis at Maison, we convert that facility to an EU GMP facility. We look for that facility also to supply a lot within the UK. So again, we're increasing our grow as we're seeing demand grow, and we're increasing our grow to be able to supply the demand for Europe, which we're seeing tremendous demand for Europe. We also, had some changes and management changes in Europe, and really focus on some big growth opportunities there. And I'm excited to see, what the opportunities are in Europe for us.
So you're also expanding in Portugal?
Listen, one of the biggest things we had more in Portugal, a couple things, was the permitting. And I personally, with our team and some of our associates met with the Portuguese government. We've worked with them in regards to speeding up getting these permits that we could ship. So that is happening now. The other thing is this here, from a German standpoint, in regards to allowing, products into Germany and getting permits from that, we've ultimately worked with the German government. And the demand right now for both Poland, UK, and Germany is tremendous. And we just never had the grow in the supply, coming out of our facilities there. So number one, with our Canadian team, and we've moved some of our Canadian employees to UK right now to help us with that and to increase our grow within our Portugal facility. And now with grow coming out of the Maison facility, we will have plenty of grow for our international business.
Right. But just in terms of a permit issue, and again, only if you can answer here, in the case of Portugal, are the permit issues and the delays solved? Are we back to normal, or there's still some problems there, some delays?
Not totally back to normal, but it's 100% better. It's again where you were not getting permits at all, that you're basically getting most of the permits.
Right.
It's just, it's just down to a few that takes time to get, and you're waiting for those.
Right. And another Canadian LP today hosted earnings, and they talked about in Germany, right, because of the import quota, there were delays in October, and there's still some permit issues there. Are you aware? Are you having that problem in Portugal, or in Germany, or you're being able to import without any problem in Germany right now yourself, to your knowledge?
We were having that problem in October also,
okay,
but we seem to have that under control now.
All right. Okay. No, that's good. Understood. And just moving on now in terms of international outlook, this question comes up quite often. This is a bit of, just getting into the numbers. Over the last 9 quarters, your international sales have been pretty flat, around $14 million, except for the recent May 2025 quarter, you did about $22 million. Then that seemed to have been a bit of a blip. We went back in August 2025 to about $13 million. Can you talk about, why is that? I mean, obviously, we've heard about the growth in Germany, but your numbers ex-May have been pretty flattish on the international side. Can you just explain that?
So some of it had to do just with permits and what we talked about. And, there was two things. There was permits, both, from Germany. There was permits, ultimately from Portugal. And then there was some permitting in regards to Spain, where we would ship products to get EU and GP certified. But, and again, listen, did we miss some opportunities? Did we not have our Portugal facility running the way we are? But, there's a team in place now that understands that. And I feel very, very good about where the European business, ultimately will go. I met on Friday night with the head from our Italian business. There's a tender coming out there. There's opportunities there. There is much demand in Poland, much demand in the UK, and we were not really selling anything in the UK. And I feel very, very good about that. And we will ultimately have plenty of supply for Germany, for the German market, from our standpoint. But, to your point, there was a couple things. Number one was permitting. Number two was, maybe we missed a couple opportunities, but I'll tell you what, that is behind us. And I am really, really excited about what I'm seeing happen in the European market. And Pablo, that's one of the reasons, I opened up an office in London to manage all of Europe out of there, okay? I made changes, in regards to the person running, the European operation. I integrated Europe with some of the Canadian grow, moved some of the Canadian people over to Europe that have been growing cannabis for the last 5 to 6 years. Mm-hmm. So again, the demand is there, the opportunity is there. And the other big thing, which I talked about before, was integrating our CC Pharma business and selling and using the selling arm of CC Pharma and helping us sell cannabis in the German market.
Mm-hmm. Look, just going on to the Messan facility in Quebec, that's a EU GMP certified?
It's not today, but it's something that we're going to work on. Now, that facility, which is really important, is a facility that's only going to supply Quebec and international markets. And, Quebec, which is all government-controlled stores, which is very important to the Quebec market, that cannabis they sell in those stores is grown within Quebec.
Right. Because at the moment, most of what you sell in Europe is coming from your facility in Portugal, right?
Some's coming from a facility in Portugal, some's coming from Germany, the others,
right.
Some, is still coming from Canada,
right?
From our Leamington facility.
Right. Okay. Look, I'm going to dig deeper on a couple of things in Europe, if you don't mind. And again, I know we only have so much time.
Nope.
In the case of the UK, in my opinion, that market, although it's still early days, right? In my opinion, is beginning to forward integrate a little bit like Australia. So, we're beginning to see the clinics, we're beginning to see the online pharmacies. Does Tilray, do you need to buy a clinic? Do you need to buy an online pharmacy? A little bit like what Curaleaf has to really have a better control of the market there.
Good question. And what we want to be careful with is not buying, from an online pharmacy and then they decide you have to go see a doctor, the online goes away, okay? Right. Yeah. But absolutely, we're looking in Australia right now at potentially buying clinics, and we're also looking where it makes sense for us from a vertical integration in acquiring clinics within the UK market.
Right. And in the case of Poland, and again, pardon the nitty-gritty questions here, in the case of Poland, to your knowledge, has the market fully recovered after the changes to telehealth?
The market, so from what I'm seeing so far, Pablo, in demand, yes, it's recovering, because I wouldn't have been seeing some of the demand and requests for product if it didn't recover.
Right.
So I'm seeing from our people a lot of grow, and some of the stuff I'm looking to bring in from Canada, going into the Poland market.
Right. Look, I know in the case of Europe, we typically talk about in terms of the demand, right? We talk about Germany, the UK, and Poland. Any other market that you want to bring up
Yeah.
that may be exciting over the next year or two?
Listen, there's stuff we're looking at in India in regards to hemp. Again, I have a team in Japan today working on a bunch of beverage stuff, and they're talking about CBD and stuff in Japan. And there's a lot of talk about, cannabis from a medical standpoint within, the China market and stuff like that. But I think you're going to continuously see more and more markets open from a medical standpoint as we continue to see the benefits and the research from cannabis and what the effects can be from a medical standpoint.
Right. Look, one last question in terms of international cannabis. I know people love to talk about moat, right? Other people talk about cannabis as being a commodity, even for medical cannabis. So why should we assume that Tilray can remain a leader in the long term in the global international medical cannabis market?
So listen, I mean, we're one of the biggest growers in Portugal. We're got an infrastructure in Germany. We have a full team over there of salespeople. We have an infrastructure built out within the European market. I built a whole office out in London now that's going to be marketing cannabis. We got research, we got quality. So, we're not sitting and managing our cannabis business out of Canada. There's a whole team internationally that's working on this daily. There's a lot of Canadian growers that are selling product into Europe, but they're running it out of their Canadian operations. That's not the case for Tilray. Tilray has a major infrastructure within our European business there that's running our cannabis business there. We also have, CC Pharma, which is a $300+ million business in Germany that sells medicine into 13,000 drugstores. We have a sales group on the street. We have infrastructure on the street. We have a warehouse that picks drugs and ships them there. So, from a full vertical integration, from, a full infrastructure, from a full team, listen, we got a big operation in Europe. And from our standpoint, you take Europe today and include our cannabis business and our European business. It's our biggest business within Tilray today. So why are we going to be relevant? Because we're there. We're there in a big way.
Yeah. No, I got it. Thank you. Look, we want to move on now to the Canadian recreational market. How you characterize your strategy and performance there. And you're typically, I mean, people, criticize Tilray for having made all these acquisitions over time. That share has been diluted over time. But, you tell us how you see your performance there and the changes you might have made recently there in terms of your business.
So when you say share has been diluted, if you come back today and you look at share, I mean, and again, if you look at Organigram, who has the #1 share, and I look at profitability, share is one thing. I'm big on profitability, and I look at growth. I don't report quarterly numbers just to share. I report, profitability. I think, again, if you come back and look at the problem in the Canadian market, there's still 1,800, cannabis producers out there. We haven't really lost share to any of the big guys. And look at the big guys today. Yes, Organigram where they are, and they acquired somebody. If you look at the Cannabis and Aurora's done a great job of the medical business. You look at Canopy, from a share standpoint. You look at Cronos, who's done a good job, and Oxley have done a good job. But where the share loss is, if you take the other 17 or 1,500 smaller LPs and 0.1% is taken you lose to those guys. That's where it's adding up to. That's kind of where we're losing share to.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're into how do we grow our gross profit? How do we grow our yields? How do we not have too many products out there, from a SKU rationalization standpoint? So I know you look at share. I look at percentage growth, and we're growing high single digits in that market.
Mm-hmm.
We've had one of the best years, the best quarters in regards to our gross profit there. We will sell close to, $200 million worth of US dollars of cannabis products and make, quite a bit of profit out of our Canadian market. So that's what's important to us is our SKU, our mix, our businesses. And we purposely, whether it was vapes that we couldn't make money, businesses that we couldn't make money, we just stayed away from those.
But in terms of innovation, anything you want to highlight in terms of flower, pre-rolls, or vape? And again, I'm not asking you to, tell us what's coming, but anything you want to highlight in terms of those three categories?
So we have some incredible, and I saw them all last week, some incredible new pre-rolls, some incredible new vapes in regards to how it released. We have some types of product like, everybody is doing these Zyn type of products, with cannabis in there. We have, in regards to some of the new drinks, we have over a 55% share within the drink category, edibles, oils. We have these mixers coming out that you can mix, which is cannabis, which you can mix with drinks and stuff like that. So there is a lot coming out within that market. But we're focused on top line growth. We're focused on profitability here, and you have to be in Canada because Pablo, it's a high cost to produce there. Utility costs, water costs, labor costs, and it was hard to get pricing there, just because of all the cannabis suppliers there. So for us, Canada is getting high single digit growth, and it's a good profitable business for us.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Irwin. Look, I'm going to move on now to the discussion. I appreciate you taking the time here for us. I know that we're going into the weeds on some things here. Let's move on to the financials. Let's talk about the balance sheet. What debt leverage are you comfortable with? You've obviously made use of the ATM to pay down the convertible debt. Is the goal to fully buy out the convertible debt over time? Just talk about that if you can.
Listen, I don't like debt, but that's okay. Where our leverage is today, I always said this, and then you knew me from my Hain days, where I've never wanted to ever go over 3 times leverage. Again, you got to watch 3 things. I'm big on watching my free cash. I'm big on, in regards to the growth of the business. And again, I will not take debt on unless I know I can service that additional debt. And, I like having cash on my balance sheet. If you looked at Tilray, and like I said, I don't like where our stock price is, but when your stock price dips below $1 or dips, right away people think the company's in trouble or going out of business or something. But when you're sitting with $270 or $250 million of cash and your debt levels and leverage are pretty low, hopefully it gives people comfort level and you got a real business out there. So I think that's what's important to me, is really to watch our debt levels and to really make sure we're generating cash and not burning cash, in operations. Yes, we're going to invest our cash, in regards to CapEx to improve our business. Yes, we're going to invest our cash in regards to building inventories and grow and building out our business. But that's, I just don't want to be out there burning cash for operations. And I'm not going to go out there and do acquisitions unless they're accretive to our earnings out there.
Yeah, no, thank you. Look, just I want to move the discussion out to the stock, right? I know shareholders complain about stock performance. The reality is that a lot of these stocks move in relation to the cycle of the industry sometimes, right? Not so much in relation to the performance of the company. Your stock is somewhat of a bellwether for the industry. Is by far the most liquid, right? NASDAQ listed, but by far the most liquid and a bellwether for the industry. Moves up with good news, moves down with bad news. How can you use that liquidity to your advantage, if in any way?
So, listen, I can use that liquidity, and I said this before, and I think there was some confusing out there from an ATM. We don't have another ATM out there. We didn't put another ATM out there, and we had to file from a regulatory standpoint, an S9. But my point is, there's a lot of liquidity. People want, to do deals, and that people want our stock from a standpoint because it's pretty liquid. You can easily trade our stock. Okay. And I think, people, it's amazing how many people know of Tilray, and there's no other company out there doing what we're doing, whether it's in beverages, whether it's in, cannabis and some of the exciting stuff that we're doing there. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of liquidity in our stock. If we wanted to do another deal using our stock, we could, because there's a lot of liquidity. And if I did a big deal and need to raise money, but right now I need to see the stock settle out here and let the stock, and hopefully the stock ultimately increases because of some type of announcement in regards to rescheduling, something that happens in regards to hemp with one of the senators or someone introducing a new bill there. Listen, I thought I came out in my last quarter, had some great numbers, and the stock, went up that day, but it just didn't hold. And in the month of September and October, we traded over 1 billion shares in those months.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's back below $1 now, but it's just a sector. It's just a sector. But
and I appreciate our retail shareholders, and that's some of the frustrating thing is I really appreciate those that just support us on our AGM. I appreciate the shareholders that have stuck there and buy in and buy out. And as one of the largest shareholders within Tilray, I have never sold a share since I've joined this company.
Right. But look, before I move on with my questions here, to those shareholders, what would be your message? Why should they stick here with the stock?
Listen, I think you got to stick here at the stock because you believe in what we're doing, okay? Cannabis is not going away. Beer is not going away. Hemp and hemp foods is not going away. And ultimately, listen, where was Bitcoin 3 months ago trading at 119, 120? It's, now trading, below 90. They're cyclical. Where was gold 9 months ago? And where's gold trading today? And I think what you got to come back is what is within inside the company today. If there's good products, good balance sheet, a good strategy, hopefully you believe in the management team, then hopefully you would hold on to the stock.
Right.
And you come back and you say this here, again, there's good value. If you come back and look at Tilray, my assets, I own, regards to 5 million square feet. My value within my assets today, my real estate assets, my facility, the parts are a lot worth more than the total sum of the, market cap today. Okay. These greenhouses are worth billions of dollars out there. My brands are worth a lot of money. So there's lots of levers and lots of things within Tilray today. And the asset value within here is tremendous.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to move the discussion now in terms of what may happen in the US. I know we've touched on this before in terms of how you think rescheduling plays out or what type of reform we may have with this administration and how could Tilray play or benefit or participate, right? And I'll tell you, this Monday at this conference in Washington, D.C. by Ignite, the All Benzinga team, Kim Rivers on Trulieve used a term about the president wanting to, and his team wanting to reschedule medical cannabis, right? Every time that I use the term bifurcation, right, I'm criticized. But she's very careful to use that term. The president wants to reschedule medical cannabis. I know that they use that term because I think it's politically correct, because that's what he said. But of course, they want to reschedule everything, and they mean that everything is going to get rescheduled. But what's your take in terms of what the president may do?
Listen, I think Kim is very close to it, and she's been a big advocate. And, I'm a big supporter and a believer of what she has done. And I think she's right on in regards to medical cannabis, that medical cannabis should be rescheduled in the US from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. In regards to recreational cannabis, he should leave it up to each of the states and let each of the states to decide what they want to do with it. With that, it allows, again, to get all the confusion out of the marketplace in regards to cannabis, in regards to safe baking, in regards to, what's legal, what's not, from a NASDAQ listing to New York Stock Exchange listing, etc. And regards to that, you know what the most important thing is, Pablo? 67% of Americans today want cannabis legalized. The crazy thing is, cannabis is legal in 27 states today from a recreational standpoint. Right. Cannabis is legal in 35 states from a medical cannabis. Yeah. And if we did legalize it, what just keeps me up at night and bothers me, we have drugs like opioids and other medical drugs out there that are legalized that are really harmful and much more harmful than cannabis. And if we could go out there, and the numerous times that I get contact about cannabis for patients that are cancer patients, that have epilepsy, that have pain, and ultimately, how do they get it? Are not educated. If we could reschedule and do what they've done with the Ozempic drugs and go out there and work with the pharma companies, it's a big business. And not only a big business, there's a big opportunity from a tax standpoint to bring tax dollars into, to the government. And that was my big thing in regards to Delta 9. If Delta 9 goes away, what happens? It creates an illicit market.
Sure.
And what happens with an illicit market? It gets sold through a black market. There's no tax, there's no control, there's no regulatory, okay? Yeah. And that's the big thing is here. If you put regulatory, if you put a plan in place, and there's tax dollars, and again, it's controlled by the FDA like medicines is, right. And then it is prescribed by doctors for all the right reasons. Right. That's the way it should be ultimately legalized, right. And that's what should happen from a rescheduling in the U.S.
But again, I know that the terms and the words here are very technical and they matter, of course. But so in your interpretation, if the president were to reschedule medical cannabis, in your interpretation, that would mean that medical cannabis is federally legalized? And
yes.
Okay.
And you could sell it in every state. And again, they would be no different than we've talked about, talked about the Delta 9. What are the potencies? How do you sell it? It's prescribed by a physician, okay? You just can't go online and get some doctor to prescribe it. It has to be prescribed, no different than if I got an antibiotic and what it could be used for. And whether we sell it through drugstores or we sell it through clinics or whatever. And that way it's legalized, it's cleared, and that way it's a real market.
Right. So okay, I'm not going to push too much the argument here. So, but I'm with you, but I don't know if the majority is with you and us and me here, because the way you're thinking about it. Okay, so medical cannabis is rescheduled to Schedule 3. It's federally legalized. It's prescribed by doctors. It's sold in pharmacies, I'm guessing. And dispensaries. I mean, it's like we go down a rabbit hole, right? It gets complicated. It's
well, it goes down a rabbit hole, but no different today. It's just here.
It's a
Great.
German model. It's a UK. It's
It's
Australian
a
model. It's
German,
UK model.
UK,
It's just
Australia
different.
model. Exactly. But today,
It's not
there's
what the
no,
MSOs. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's not what the MSOs are lobbying for.
again, it's not what the MSOs are lobbying for, but, ultimately, can the MSOs set it up as part of the MSO as the medical and the recreational? I don't think that ultimately you can't walk into an MSO and on one side buy recreational, on the other side buy the medical. Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's got to be a regulatory, there's got to be a medical benefit for it. There's got to be the potencies, there's got to be the strains, and that's the way it should be.
Right.
But I'm not saying at all, Kim Rivers and all the others, in regards to that she could not, have in her store that come in here for your medical cannabis and be able to buy your medical cannabis here. So I'm not saying that that's not the case. And listen, I think the drug companies ultimately, would pay for a lot of this. What happens right now, there's a lot of companies out there where medical cannabis today, where it can be prescribed, it's part of the drug plan.
Yeah.
And it's paid for by the drug plan.
Yeah. I mean,
and I think from a pricing standpoint, it's again, why are drugs so expensive in this country? And President Trump is trying to bring pricing down. I think, again, being regulated helps with pricing here.
No, for sure. I just, of course, I want rescheduling. I want descheduling. I just find that the more they will think about it, the more complicated they will realize this is, and that's why it may take longer. Look,
well, I think if it's here, whether it's the Kim Rivers or the Irwin Simons, you bring the group together and help them put together the right policy, which we would agree on, and we help with the right regulation. And that's what has to happen within these businesses today. People that understand this, and again, we're going to deal with something that's going to help people, not hurt people. That's what the important thing is, Pablo.
Yes, of course. Look, I know we're going to be out of time. I'll just read some very brief questions from the audience, just short answers, Irwin. Would it make sense for Tilray to bring in a large strategic investor, either a CPG or a pharmaceutical company?
Listen, I think, again, I'm always open to that. Why have you brought those in is ultimately for equity, for money, okay? But to bring in a large pharmaceutical company, if cannabis became legal in the US, I would be really open to bring in a large, pharmaceutical company as a partner here. I think absolutely open to it, but it's for the right time and for the right reasons.
Right. Okay. Someone else is asking, given, the hemp ban, although it's effective in a year's time, how does this affect your plans to scale up that business now over the next 12 months? Do you put everything on hold, or do you just press the pedal?
I'm pressing the pedal. I'm an optimist, and I think something will happen here. And, I'm a big believer. When there's a fire, you run into the fire. You don't run away and close up shop.
Okay. Someone asking, along the same lines, Happy Flower and some of your other hemp Delta 9 drink brands, if you can mention a couple of chains where it's being sold.
So it's being sold, at ABC. It's being sold in Texas. It's being sold in numerous independents. I got to tell you, which is the sad thing. ABC Liquor. I mean, the sad thing is this here: the growth of that business and the demand. Mm-hmm. And I, the other day when all this came out, as I looked at the trajectory here since the team has been building this since the summer and what's gone on each month. So again, it's in those chains and in many other, chains out there too, many other stores out there too. And it's interesting too, because New York is really lobbying, because in New York, you only can sell, 2.0, and they're trying to get a change to sell it to, 4 or 5 milligrams here. Right. I don't know what's going to happen, now, but there's a lot of the independent, independent liquor
Yes.
stores and that, that are out there, because as they see the decline in spirits and that, they're looking for other products to replace it.
Right. Look, someone is asking a question that maybe, look, I mean, the spin of the question is a bit negative, but I'll read it anyway in a careful way. It's saying, given that you have these 500 beer distributors, it seems that you should have been able to scale up your Delta 9 drinks business a lot faster, given that a lot of beer distributors out there have gotten on board with Delta 9 drinks across the country. It seems that you should have been able to scale up your business a lot faster. What would you say to that?
Well, I think we really only started, it's only available in 13 states, okay? So It's not a national distribution here.
All right.
And there's only so many places to sell it. I think, again, and I'm not going to, give projections of that out there, but
Yep.
where this was going, Pablo, in numbers, and again, these guys, everybody was coming to Tilray because they know from a legitimacy standpoint, we're in the cannabis business, we're in the beverage business, we know how to make these drinks from a quality standpoint. So we were scaling this up to be able to support it. It was not what I didn't want us to do is just stack them high and watch them fly, okay? And from a Tilray standpoint, it was not profitable for us because we got to invest in these business, okay?
Right.
So I didn't want to go out there and try and build a 20, 30, 40, $50 million business and not have it sustainable. So I think we've done an incredible job to where we got it to. And let's see where we go from there.
Right. Oh, that's great. Irwin, thank you very much for taking the time here. We're almost on 1 hour here. I don't know if you have any closing remarks. I know you already made your message very clear to shareholders, but any closing remarks here? And thank you again for taking 1 hour here to speak to us and to our audience.
Well, I really appreciate this. And again, I thank you because very good questions and very good exchange of conversation here. And I like that. I'm always open to input. Are we doing everything right? No. As I told a shareholder this morning, bring it on to me. And if I see it, we're going to listen to it. And I ask Barron all the time, what are they saying on Reddit? What are they saying about us? What should we be listening to? What are we not doing? And, at the end of the day, running a business, is difficult, but that's what we've got to do. That's what we're employed to do. And how do we deal with the market? There's certain things, like I said to you before, there's some good things happening out there and there's some challenges out there. But I'll tell you what, I believe in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. I believe in the team I have with me. I believe in the category. And if not, change is something you have to make. And I think that's a big thing within Tilray. And you come back and look, since I've taken over in 6 years, what we have built here is pretty phenomenal. I wish, again, we were talking about different stock prices, but ultimately, I think, we'll see that come with some regulatory changes.
Yeah, no, understood. Irwin, thank you very much. And to the audience, thanks for joining us. Everyone, have a good day. Thanks, Irwin.
Thank you very much, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody, Pablo.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.